Mornings with Jones and Tyrrell.
Morning to you. It's 9:20 degrees, Fort Erie Radio. I'm Brent Jones.
I'm Brenda Tyrrell.
You're welcome to join the conversation anytime you like.
Please do it, 289-931-8400.
You can text us or you can call us for any reason. One good reason, in fact, may be because Mayor Wayne Redekop is here in the studio with us. And I can't imagine us having much to talk about this morning, sir.
I love the applause.
Oh, well, yeah. We try. We try to be polite hosts.
It's so seldom that I get it.
So anything exciting going on in the town of Fort Erie right now?
Yeah, I hear it's been crickets these last couple of weeks.
It's been pretty quiet, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a small, sleepy town. Not much happened.
Yeah. We were talking a bit off air. Obviously, there's a lot. It's a multifaceted issue getting into the hospital business. And we wanted to talk largely this morning with you about the future. What's the response? What do we do from here? But one point I did want to underscore just quickly, when this announcement came out about, the Douglas Memorial site's going to be closed on Fridays, on long weekends throughout the summer, was June the 9th, Monday, June the 9th. That was the first time you heard about this. This was not brought to you before. There was no meeting. There was no consultation. That was the first time you heard something was happening.
There was a meeting on May the 22nd with Bill Steele and me, and it was participated in by the president and CEO of Niagara Health. And it was basically to let us know that they were having trouble filling gaps in the shift schedule. And so this, they might have to do something in terms of closures in the summer. We made it clear, both Bill and I, that wasn't really something that we were supportive of, that it would create real problems within our communities if it did happen. And then we offered to assist them to recruit family physicians to work in the urgent care center, something which the town of Fort Erie is doing in any event. Part of our recruitment program is to require new physicians to try to get credentials to work in the urgent care center. So we left the meeting, I felt, on an upbeat note. I sent an email to Lynn Guerrero the next day and basically expressed my optimism that we'd be able to assist them. Asked a couple of questions, 3 questions actually. Number one, could I have a copy of their physician recruitment program? Number 2, how many emergency doctors and UCC doctors, additional doctors, did they require? And number 3, what was the information that they wanted us to amplify on our communications media, our website, our social media?
Sure.
I didn't get a response to that. And then the week before June the 9th, which was a Monday, we received an email saying that Niagara Health wanted to give us an update on the situation on Monday. So we set up the appointment and subsequently learned a number of other things. And we actually learned, Bill and I learned at around 10:30 that these closures were going to take place. It was about the same time that the Niagara Health released the story about the closures. So we learned about the same time as the public. Our counselors learned after that, which obviously didn't sit well. And so I happen to believe that staff as well at the two sites, Port Colborne and Fort Erie, learned about the same time.
The reason I ask about it is because we received an invitation here at Fort Erie Radio on Friday afternoon at 5:20 p.m. from the communications team at Niagara Health. Said we are holding a technical briefing about an important announcement Monday at 9 a.m. We were invited to attend. Now, we are a small-town media outlet, so, we only have so many resources to go around, and said, look, if there's a press release coming after, that would really be easier than us traveling to St. Catharines. But clearly there must have been knowledge this was going to happen days before, the announcement was officially made.
Well, when you play it backwards, you have to appreciate that the administration can't do this type of thing without the approval of the Board of Trustees for the hospital. So the week before, there had been a meeting, and I believe that the board had approved this, which would mean prior to coming to the board, the administration must have put together some type of report and justification for why the closures were necessary, which means that sometime between May the 22nd and a few days later, maybe on May the 22nd, this decision had already been made. Right. And if you were given notification about something happening at 9 o'clock on June the 9th and the meetings with the mayors are at 10:30,
right.
That really cuts to the issue of faith, good faith,
sure,
or bad faith.
Sure.
Now, if they're not able to find enough staff to operate in urgent care, How are they going to find enough staff to operate a huge new hospital?
Well, so that's an interesting question, and one would think that would be something at top of mind. But the other question is, not all of the physicians who work in urgent care are qualified to work in an emergency department. So by closing the urgent care centers, you're not necessarily providing the physicians that you need for the emergency department, which has been their main complaint. And we don't argue with the fact that the emergency departments are first and foremost and they have to be manned. We're just saying that the urgent care centers are also important, not only to the communities that they sit in, but also to all of Niagara. Because a while ago when I asked for data from Niagara Health, I learned that about a quarter of the patients that come to Fort Erie are from places other than Fort Erie. So they come from St. Catharines, from Niagara Falls, from Welland. They come from all over. And it's the same thing in Port Colborne. And in fact, Niagara Health has, over the last several months, embarked upon a campaign to ensure that people who have lesser medical maladies will go to an urgent care center so that they're relieving pressure from the emergency departments.
Right.
So on the one hand, they're directing people to facilities, and on the other hand, they're not addressing the issue of the need for physicians or the need to have physicians try to pick up more shifts. And on the other hand, they're closing the urgent care centers,
which they're directing people to go to. So it's Kafkaesque, I guess, would be the phrase that would come to mind.
We just got off a week of vacation, Wayne. No big words in here this morning, okay? Keep it simple for us. Now, we are going to have to cut to a break here in just a moment, and we'll be back with you. But I did want to ask, maybe it's a big question for only having a minute left, but there's the saying that goes, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. And I think there's a lot of discussion about what could have been done differently 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, 2 years ago, 2 decades ago to maintain services at the Douglas Memorial Site. My question is, if you had this meeting on May 22nd and they're saying we don't have the staff for the summer, what is the solution? What should they have done instead of saying, okay, we're going to shut down, we're going to take services away from Port Colborne and Fort Erie?
So they weren't that clear on May the 22nd. It was supposedly a heads up that there was something that might have to happen. And so what they could have done is they could have done a number of things in terms of who they were targeting. So if you look at their fact sheet that they distributed, and you read it carefully.
And we will get into the fact sheet coming up next.
And you read it carefully, which a lawyer would do. And you see that their focus was emergency doctors. It wasn't urgent care physicians. And so, if they offered incentives, maybe it was to emergency doctors. I don't know. If they were putting out a schedule, maybe the emergency doctors saw one, but the urgent care physicians didn't see a schedule until 10:30 on January the 9th. So they didn't
January
know
the 9th or June the 9th?
Sorry, June the 9th.
Okay.
So they didn't see their schedule for July and August until then. So they couldn't really offer to fill gaps in the schedule until then. And by that time, Niagara Health had already decided that Fridays, Saturdays, and long weekends were going to be affected.
I see. Okay. We are going to be back with Mayor Wayne Redekop in just a moment. We already got at least one question here on the text line. If you want to send in some questions, we'll pass on as many as we can. 289-931-8400. More discussion to come about the Douglas Memorial Site. You are listening to Fort Erie Radio. This is Guns N' Roses.
Mornings with Jones and Tyrrell.
Morning. Welcome back to the show. 9:27 and 20 degrees. I'm Brent Jones.
I'm Brenda Tyrrell.
And sitting here in the hot seat, Mr. Mayor Wayne Redekop. How are you doing this morning, sir?
So far, so good.
Wayne number one.
Wayne number one.
Is Mr. Gates number two? Is that how it works?
Yes.
We're ranking Waynes here?
That's the way that they rank themselves at the press conference.
Oh, I see. We got questions.
This is Wayne 1.
We got questions on the text line. Somebody asked, when are we going to take down the hospital signs from the side of the road so tourists don't go rushing to a hospital that's no longer a hospital?
Well, we don't control that. But if that's still there, then that's an oversight on Niagara Health's part. They are usually pretty zealous to make sure that it's not referred to as a hospital. It's a site.
Oh, so they're responsible for any signs that may still be up.
I presume.
Wow,
Okay.
Niagara Health overlooking something. That's a shock. Another question was, what would it take for the town to operate Douglas Memorial, or are you considering some portion of it?
So the resolution that we passed as a council in October specifically was directed to the Premier and the Minister of Health, and it talked about if Niagara Health does not want to continue operations in Fort Erie, then provide the funding to the town of Fort Erie, and we would find the service providers. For the urgent care center, the chronic care beds, the palliative care beds, the diagnostics. So it's a matter of money.
Because that was a hospital that was operating in the black prior to this, correct?
Absolutely.
Like 20 years ago. I mean, it wasn't even that long ago.
Well, prior to amalgamation, it was operating in the black, as were a number of other hospitals, including the smaller ones. There were some large hospitals that had quite large debt, and I don't believe Niagara Health has ever been able to recover from that. They've limped along, and I believe last year they had a deficit as well. So that's been a long-standing problem. And really, if you're the provincial government, whichever one, and we've been through some iterations since 1999, you have to make sure that these institutions have adequate funding, and you have to make sure that they're accountable, and you have to make sure that their operations are transparent. But most importantly, you have to make sure that they fulfill their mandate, which is to serve the people within their catchment areas.
And that falls to Sylvia Jones, the health minister? Is that...
She's the current Minister of Health, and Niagara Health would be accountable to the ministry.
And you've had some exchange with Sylvia Jones since this all began just a week ago?
We have. In fact, the resolution that I mentioned in October was sent to her and the Premier. We asked for a response. We asked for the Premier to support that resolution. We sent a subsequent one. Councillor McDermott put forward a motion in February. Again, that was sent off to the Minister. I had to follow that up with both of them asking for a response. Finally did get a response about 2 weeks ago from the Minister acknowledging that she'd received the letters, and then not really addressing the essence of our resolutions, including our suggestion that we have some solutions that we think we can provide to them, and went on to say what they have done in Ontario over the past few years. I sent a follow-up letter saying that the response, in my view, was rather disappointing, and that we wanted an opportunity to meet with her so that we could explain to her how we could improve hospital and health care for the residents of Niagara and save the government money.
And this is the whole premise. So for the simpletons like me who don't maybe fully understand all the intricacies of this, it's, hey, let's redirect the funding and say, hey, instead of the funding going to Niagara Health to provide a service or a site that they are intending to close ultimately, give the money to the town, let the town operate it. Is that the idea?
Precisely. If Niagara Health doesn't want to operate, we've got another plan. We've refined that. Niagara Health's role would be quite limited in terms of the vision that we have for how that hospital building, which was built for healthcare services, can be utilized to the benefit of not just the residents of Fort Erie, but the residents of Niagara, and in particular, the Niagara Health system.
Now, we mentioned this when we were talking briefly about it off air, and I know Tyrrell and I both have some questions on this, but we've been covering the events sort of as they've unfolded, the announcement from Niagara Health, your initial remarks, some remarks at council, the press conference. Now, at the press conference, Niagara Health unveiled their, what they called a fact sheet, I believe is how it was titled. They provided a very similar statement to Fort Erie Radio, and we were curious to get your input on some of the claims and some of the items here from this fact sheet. One of them that they refute wholeheartedly is the claim that they do not have a physician recruitment program. They say, yes, we absolutely do. That's a mistruth from the mayor. Who's lying here? I guess that's what we're getting to. Who's telling fibs?
Well, if you want to know if they have a program, ask for it in writing. And so what they've now done, and when I spoke to the president last week, she said, well, we do this, we go to trade fairs, we go there, we do this, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, that's not a program. And she said, well, I can put all of this down in writing. And I said, well, that's an overview. That's an overview of what you're doing, but it's not a plan. So if they've got a plan, then produce it in writing. I know that recently they've put up a whole bunch of stuff on their website, again, talking about all the stuff that they've done. But what is their program for reaching out to physicians, either physicians locally, which is really the low-lying fruit for urgent care centers or emergency departments, because these are physicians that have made some commitment to the communities. What is their onboarding process? What is their plan for training these physicians if they need cardiac training or if they need life support training to get them integrated? So haven't seen that. And if you've seen it, it would be what's recently been put up on the website. So they can call it what they want. I don't call it a plan.
Now, you've extended an invitation to both Premier Ford and the Minister of Health to come down and take a look and discuss things with you. What if you don't get a response, or if their response is simply, oh, everything will be great, it'll be fine, then what do we do?
Well, we haven't gotten to the point where we've actually asked them to come to Fort Erie, but that would be one of the next steps. What we have done is ask them to support our efforts to continue the operation of the urgent care center here and the services that are currently being providing at Douglas Memorial. We have received correspondence, not from the Premier, but from the Minister of Health, which would be typical. And the response that we received from the Minister wasn't particularly responsive. Let me say that.
So when the Minister and the Premier are both kind of like ignoring you, what steps can you take?
Well, there's all kinds of things that you can do to get people's attention, and that's what we're working on. I mean, this is a democracy. We live in a free society, and so there are all kinds of things that you can do. What we're trying to do is make sure that as we bring attention to this issue, as we try to ensure that the needs of the people of Fort Erie and Niagara are met from a healthcare perspective, that the people who are ultimately responsible are aware of what's going on. They're not aware of what's going on. I mean, when you think about it, Niagara Health is an institution. It has a board of trustees. They're appointed, and it's kind of a self-contained unit. One leaves, another one comes in, typically vetted by the administration and approved by the existing board, so that it's a closed system. Who is it accountable to? Nobody except the Minister of Health. So when there are problems of this magnitude in two growing communities in a growing area of the province, one would think that the minister would want to find out what's going on. And to some extent, she's finding out. She hears what Niagara Health tells her because there's a hotline between the two of them. And they know exactly what Niagara Health is saying. And so at that point, rather than dismiss the pleas coming from Fort Erie and Port Colborne, the minister should really try to get a look at the other side of the equation to find out why it is that people are so upset in Fort Erie and Port Colborne, and why the elected officials would go to the lengths of calling a media conference to call out Niagara Health.
We are speaking with Mayor Wayne Redekop this morning. If you've got questions and you'd like us to pass them on, you can text them in the 289-931-8400. Now, I do want to return to the fact sheet in a moment, but just on the topic about the board of directors and sort of the leadership at Niagara Health, I am curious, and again, this is my outsider's perspective, but we know that Councillor Tom Lewis has made it known that on June 23rd, he intends to bring forward a motion, in part to withhold funding for the new hospital, but also to call for the resignation of Niagara Health CEO, the board of directors. Is that an effective next step in terms of, you said that there are all kind of things we can do? I mean, is that the right move? Is that political theater? What is this? How should we interpret this as residents of Fort Erie? Is this going to be a meaningful step towards a solution?
So let me say that councillors and the mayor don't always agree on strategies. And so this is something that I wouldn't have done. I've had some discussions with Councillor Lewis. All of the councillors are excellent. They're very knowledgeable. They're aware of the issues, and their objective is to do what's best for the community.
Of course.
So in this particular case, I'm in a different role than a councillor. I'm trying to, and I have to, continue to try to work with the people who are the president and the CEO, the directors, and so my take has to be slightly different. And so I try to do that. Do I think that? So there is a point at which that type of step I think would be helpful. But I do believe that Councillor Lewis isn't the only one. I believe that the councillors are reflecting the sentiments within the community, and the community has been upset now, going on 2.5 decades, because of the way we've been treated by a health system and by not just this current provincial government, but by successive provincial governments who have allowed this to happen. They're enabling Niagara Health to do what they're doing. And so you go from a full-service hospital 30 years ago to one now that is providing urgent care, some chronic care, palliative care, some diagnostics, we're on life support because we know that Niagara Health's plan is to shut us down when the new hospital is opened. So there are a number of steps that we can do. In terms of the board, I did speak with the chair of the board last week. We had a frank discussion. I sent to her some communications. I don't know whether she was receiving copies from her own administration, but she's now aware of what was going on between the mayor of Fort Erie and the president of Niagara Health. And they've offered to meet with us. I told her that I wanted to meet with her to explain what our plan was for Douglas Memorial. And so once we accept it, hope to be in front of the Board of Trustees again on June the 24th, I believe it is. So we'll take advantage of that opportunity, and then we'll explain to them what we see and hope that they're more responsive. I did appear before the board at the end of January of this year. Mm-hmm. They were very responsive, but you have to appreciate the fact that I'm an outsider. I'm regarded by them as somebody on the other side. They have highly paid professional staff giving them advice and providing them with recommendations. Wouldn't be hard to imagine that they would want to follow the people they're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to,
sure,
as opposed to a mayor with a clear objective, which unfortunately happens to be contrary to their plans.
Right.
And does this help restore the loss of trust and confidence that you guys have?
Does what help restore them?
Like having this meeting with...
Well, the meeting is designed really for us to try to make sure that there's no filter between what we're saying and what their administration is telling them, so that we remove the filter. We can speak directly to the Board of Trustees, all of whom are people who live in Niagara. They've made commitments to their own communities. I'm sure that they're very well intentioned, and they want the best results for all of the residents of Niagara. So we just want to make sure that there's no filter there, and that we have an opportunity to provide to them exactly what our vision is. And it's not contrary to what their strategic plan is, except that we're saying don't close the urgent care centers, utilize them. They're not an outdated mode of delivering health care. They're actually complementary to the family doctors and the emergency departments, and they fulfill an extremely valuable service, and you wouldn't be directing people to them if you didn't have a belief in that.
Well, find a way to make them part of the solution rather than saying eliminating them is the solution, which seems to be the current model.
Exactly.
So returning to this fact sheet, Niagara Health has, they've had a few things to say about you, sir. Let's see, you've made inflammatory remarks in the media. Is that a fact or a fiction?
You can see I'm on fire right now.
Yeah. You can.
So look, my experience with Niagara Health has been that if you say anything that they don't like, you're inflammatory.
Of course.
They're, as I've said before, they seem to be allergic to any type of criticism. Even constructive criticism. Now,
they also, at the same time, said that they have 111 physician shifts. They're short this summer. Province-wide, there's a doctor shortage. And they've made this point back to you to say, well, kind of, where do you want these doctors to come from? We have 111 physician shifts we're short. What do you want us to do? What's your response to that?
So when you drill down on that, you find out that of the 111 shifts, about more than half were St. Catharines Emergency Department.
Yes.
And then about another third was the Niagara Falls Emergency Department. And then you're down to, I don't know, a very small number in Fort Erie and Port Colborne. And that's after they've taken out the Fridays and the Saturdays and the long weekends. But, the doctors that work in the urgent care centers are terribly committed to their communities. And so if you want doctors to step up, you have to let them know what do you want us to step up to? What are the gaps that are sitting here? Can I fit that in? Will I work, an extra 2 or 3 shifts? Will I cancel something so that I can serve my community? So that's the part I think that's very distressing to me as well, is that, the schedule for physicians for July and August came out the same morning that we were told the ERs and the urgent care centers are being closed. Yes. So that those physicians that work in the urgent care center were told about the same time about the closures as we were, and their schedule was released at the same time, so that when it shows up, now they know what the open dates are, what the gaps are within the urgent care schedule, and so they can fill those gaps, I'm quite sure. The other thing that we've done is we have provided them with opportunities to hire family physicians, upscale their training so that they can work in urgent care. And we've also discussed with Dr. Chan the need for some of these physicians to be shadowed so that the first 2, 3, 4 shifts that they work, they want to know that there's someone there that if something arises that they're not familiar with, there's someone that they can fall back on until they get their sea legs and they have a understanding and they feel much more comfortable working in that environment. So that's something that could be done. These are things that we're going to be talking to Niagara Health about again, because we have a meeting scheduled, I believe, tomorrow to talk about some of these things. And, we've made it quite clear to the Premier, to the Minister of Health, to Niagara Health, that we want to be part of the solution. We don't want to lose services when it's not necessary.
No, I know Brenda's got a question she's burning to ask you over here, but I just wanted you to respond to this last one real quick from the statement we got from Niagara Health. It says, Fort Erie has yet to bring forward a primary care proposal for the urgent care center. Fact or fiction?
So think about it. When did Fort Erie...
Trust me, I did, but go ahead.
when was a municipality charged with health care? We don't have health in our name like Niagara Health does. And so the reality is that we haven't come up with the plan that they want. So they wanted us to do something similar to what Port Colborne is doing. We've resisted that because we have a larger vision and we think that we can do much more than they're proposing. And we're going to reveal that to them now that we're being given the opportunity. And we will let the minister know the details as well. So we believe that we can provide them with a lot of solutions to a lot of their problems. And so the fact that we haven't provided them with a model that they like doesn't mean we haven't been working on a model.
Now, since the schedule came out, like you said, that the doctors didn't have it until the last minute. Has anybody or the union or anything reached out and said, hey, wait a minute, no, we can fill these gaps. There's no need to close.
So the doctors, I don't believe, are unionized, and I don't know what's gone on between the urgent care physicians and Niagara Health. So I don't know whether some of those gaps have been filled. I don't know whether... And I think it's possible, and I did speak with the president about the possibility of some of these days that are supposed to be closed being opened if they have adequate physicians to work those shifts. So, we'll see if that transpires, but it would certainly be helpful. And, in fairness to them, their overriding concern is they didn't want to be closing these urgent care centers at the last minute. I get that, but the way this has come down is really... not acceptable, and I believe there could have been solutions found if we'd been given more information, if it had been more open, and if we'd been allowed to participate to assist them.
And holidays and weekends are kind of like when accidents happen, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like,
decisions are made by people who've never had a couple wobbly pops before on a long weekend.
I have to tell you that one of the journalists that I was speaking to last week said, do you think that it's wise to be closing urgent care centers on long weekends in the summer?
Yeah, well, it's bad enough you got to take, if you need a vet on a Saturday or a Sunday, that you have to drive all the way to St. Catharines. Now you got to do that for humans as well.
Yeah. We have to wrap up in just a moment. One more quick question from the text line. Do we know how many people are actually using Fort Erie's urgent care? What the numbers look like?
Yeah, we have that data, and the reality is that the numbers go up and down. But there's a fair number of people that go through there. The urgent care center would serve more people during a day than most of the family physicians in their own office.
Sure.
So it's a valuable asset there. And these are people that don't have a physician, or it's after hours and their physician isn't available. So these are people that need care. And rather than go to an emergency department and clog it up, these are minor maladies, although some people show up at the urgent care center with more serious medical issues, which we encourage to go to the emergency department because that's the emergency department's function. So we do know the numbers. What we also know is that if you close one of them, then the people that would go to that one will likely migrate to the other one, which means you're going to increase the number of patients that the physician who is working in that urgent care center is going to have to deal with during the course of the same number of hours. So it's putting a further burden on the doctors and the nurses that are working in the one urgent care center that is left open. And likely what will happen is people will simply not go to get medical treatment that day. They'll wait.
We just got one other quick question. What happens to the doctors and nurses who work in the urgent care? Are they just laid off for those days?
No, they're filling the gaps.
They're at other places. Mr. Redekop, thank you for spending time with us this morning. We appreciate it. Thank you for being here and keep fighting the good fight, all right?
Great. Thanks very much for having me.
Mornings with Jones and Tyrrell. Weekdays 6 to 10 a.m.
Only on Fort Erie Radio.